work. There you go.
Forward.
Hard work. Hard work. Hard work. Hard work. Hard work. There you go.
Forward.
Hard work. Hard work. Hard work.
Fall in.
Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. What's good with y'all? Y'all know what it is. First Formation Morning Sports Talk. So come on and fall in as we get to talking about what's been happening in sports over the last couple of days. So, of course, if y'all read the caption initially, y'all know there's going to be a special treat that will come at the top of the hour as my man Alex Miller, coach of the CMB, that's the Colorado Military Basketball team, will be pulling up and popping in with it as we talk about his congratulatory win as CMB was able to win the Military Basketball Association's championship this past weekend in Philadelphia. So, of course, congratulations to the team, Pert, Argyle, and the squad, everyone that's on CMB. Continuing tradition seemingly, in which we'll talk about that, but that's later on in the show at the top of the hour when Coach Miller pulls up. I think we got some things to talk about, but I mean, of course, we'll see as it goes. But in any case, basically, so there's a few things to talk about. We already know the NBA situation that they got going on. A conversation that I had via social media with a couple of counterparts in which you're going to engage and talk about as well. Additionally, let's get into the situation. Well, first and foremost, I stand corrected. Of course, we're going to say, of course, hearts and prayers go out to the family of the Waltons, i.e., as we all know, if you haven't been under a rock or haven't been paying attention, Hall of Famer Bill Walton passed away at the age of 71 after he died with his fight with cancer. So if you don't know Bill Walton, then you just don't watch sports, particularly that in college sports, particularly on the West Coast, as well as the NBA. Two-time NBA champion with two organizations, a two-time national champion for basketball, playing with the wizardry of Coach John Wooden out at UCLA. He breeded his son, of course, Luke Walton Jr., who we know, NBA champion himself with the Lakers as well as the Golden State Warriors, coaching at three organizations, being the Lakers, the Warriors, as well as the Sacramento Kings. But he did pass away, as we know. He was very vibrant, even in the later years. You know, he was his playing career was snatched from him as he was had problems with his feet, back, and spine. But he made it work as best he could. Continue on, of course, you can see things in which he's helping Shaq out early in his career when he was still at LSU. So, of course, he was always willing to give back to the game and kind of like teach shows and inform those, especially being a big man that was playing. But he did succumb to cancer this past week. Well, correction, yesterday. So, condolences to his family. But staying in basketball, but a little different of a topic. I said I was going to put on and engage and talk about the WNBA for the whole season. I'm a subscriber to the WNBA channel. Their platform, so I can be able to catch the games when I'm not at home and be able to see them. Being a Los Angeles Sparks fan and being here in Texas, it's a little hard to see them unless I basically take a trip down to Dallas to check them out when they go to Dallas, in which I have plans to try to do that, so I can see one of my favorite teams in the WNBA, keeping that home support. But it's not looking good for that home team. But as a fan, that's what we do. We don't move and shake depending on what the team is doing. You still continue to root for that team with the hopes that they're going to turn it around. And through it, the Sparks, although they don't have the best of records, they have been competitive. Interestingly enough, their 1-4 record doesn't really speak to what it is that they've been doing on the court. But again, it does speak to what they're doing on the court because they don't have any W's when you look at the first 5 games over the course of the season. So the WNBA just wrapped up their first part of the season, in which now between the 12 teams, you can see there's a definitive line, so to speak. I guess you can say within the first week, it is a 40-game season. So, in that being said, I'm very sure there's some surprising things that have come out of this. The Connecticut Sun, for one, is the top team in the WNBA with a 5-0 record, the only undefeated record that's out there. When you take in consideration, you got the New York Liberty that has a loaded team, the Las Vegas Aces, who is the 2-time defending champions, who have a loaded team as well. Both those teams currently sit with losses on their record. Las Vegas Aces are 3-1, taking the L to the Chicago Liberty, and then the Chicago Liberty are 4-2, as they have taken the L as well to I believe the Sky as well. Connecticut, like I said, 5-0. The Lynx looking pretty good, 4-1 currently on their season. Chicago Sky at 500 with 2-2 on their record. The Seattle Storm 3-3 in their trek as they could continue on and go down. And then, of course, the Mercury, after having a pretty bad season last year, are in the thick of it. Currently a top 6 team out of the 12-team pecking order. Unfortunately, what we see is that the Fever, in which is expected, if anything was expected, then I don't know where everyone what the mindset it was. But currently the Indiana Fever sit at a 1-6 record and look to continue to build upon that and get it. They did get their first W against, of course, as I predicted, against the LA Sparks just this past weekend, or I think it was Friday, in which they got that victory. So at least all those teams have a W, except for one, that's the Mystics, as they currently sit as 0-6 to start the first, I guess you could say, finishing out the first month of the WNBA season. Of course, there's plenty of games to go. Actually, 34 games left in the season. Who knows? What if they run off 34 straight or something like that? So it's always going to be something of a matter of where you got to really pay attention and take in consideration that these teams are still playing no different from men's or women's, or any other game in which you have to build on it. And right now, the Connecticut Sun are off to a nice pace, 7.4 differential in scoring when it comes to their offense, in the top 3 of the league. So that's something to hang their hat on. So shout out, like I said, WNBA and the women as they continue on. As we know, game scheduled for tonight, Tuesday night, Phoenix and the Connecticut Sun face off. Like I said, top 1 versus 6. The Indiana Fever and the Los Angeles Sparks running back again. Maybe the Sparks can even the series, even the score, and return the favor of L's to the Fever, or does the Fever get another victory? And basically, their only 2 victories come against the Los Angeles Sparks. That's Cameron Brink, Rickea Jackson, and last but not least, the Seattle Storm will be facing off against the Chicago Sky with the last game of the night. You can catch the Los Angeles Sparks and the Indiana Fever on the NBA TV if you don't have the WNBA app. So, like I said at the top, I had a conversation. I was engaged in a conversation with a couple of individuals, short-lived, I guess you can say, but it was a conversation in any case in which we were talking NFL. So, as we know, the NFL season has already been in full swing. Not the season, but the planning for the season is in full swing. Currently going through spring practices, OTAs, in which, of course, what is going to be one of the main topics is What Caleb Williams, the number one overall draft pick from just this past NFL draft, is going to look like, right? So, of course, last week it came out that Caleb Williams was benched during their OTAs after throwing 7 consecutive interceptions in practice, right? So, of course, I was tagged in a post or a comment in which this individual, I don't know if he wants to be revealed, so I don't know. I won't say any names, but this individual basically said that he was like, the end state is he said this was going to happen, and basically said that Caleb Williams wasn't going to be the player in which everyone thinks he's going to be, and all these sorts. So, of course, I just reverted back with the fact of Caleb Williams has to get used to the game. He was the Heisman Trophy winner 2 years ago in college, making him the best college player in college, arguably. And then he kind of defaulted, regressed a little bit. His second year as the Trojan team wasn't as potent as they were the year before, but yet he still was picked as the number one overall draft pick this coming season, of course. And then the past year's Heisman Trophy winner, that being Jaden Daniels, was selected as the Heisman Trophy winner this past year, and then he was selected number 2 in that pecking order when it came to the drafting of the quarterback. So 1 and 2, basically, when you look at it. So not only because Caleb Williams is a Pac-12 quarterback, or was a Pac-12 quarterback, came from the University of Southern California, the Trojans, victory, but just not taking that away from it. But when you take it, in-state is you have to give him an opportunity to get better. Like, he has to. We're talking about pros. Everyone's pros, and the always what is said is that the NFL, everyone is faster than what it was in college, because these are some of the most top elite players in professional football. Only 53 rosters, so you have to go with the best 53 people for your organization. And sometimes those best 53 are kind of curated to where they line up to make the best team. So it might not be the fastest or the strongest, but they have something that provides them an opportunity to build the team chemistry, because sports, especially football, is a team sport. So as I said to them, that he was, a lot of people continue to call him trash, and which he may be. I'm not disputing that. What only thing I'm trying to point out and make clear is that in-state is that Caleb Williams from the Chicago Bears, drafted by from USC by the Chicago Bears, number 1 draft pick in the 2024 23-24 draft, has to have time to develop. Chicago Bears may or may not be that great of a team this coming season, but again, they have to have time to develop, as they are a fairly new offense. Like, yes, he went out and got weapons, so presumably when you got the DJ Moore, that is in the building. Who is it? Allen, that is in the building. Kemet. They got Sanders, I believe. So it's they have weapons, presumably. It's just you have to give them an opportunity to develop. And so it's still out for me, in which you see how Caleb Williams is going to do. 7 interceptions back to back in a summer league practice isn't the best start, but of course he has to develop. He has to learn the offense, in which his coach Mike Eberflus came out and said, Eric Eberflus said he's going. They're loading him up. They're not taking it easy. He has to learn the offense, and they have to know that he's going to be able to run the offense. So they're not taking it easy on him, in which he probably is going to be a little bit of a curve. Barnard, who is a safety coming over from Tennessee, is now a Chicago Bear, and he basically said we got the best of them. He's like, that's going to happen sometimes. He's like, you got to take into consideration the Chicago Bears offense is a top 10, top 15, top 10, top 15 type defense. And there's a rookie that is at the helm of the offense currently. So he's going, and then you got to take into consideration, like I was just talking about, Malik Allen. He's basically in there. What's good, Eric? What's good going on, fam? What's good with you, bro? Glad to have your formation this morning. See you be doing your thing out there. Salute. So it's you got to take in consideration that is basically what's going to happen until he gets right. Now, like I said, he played against a top defense, top 10 presumably defense, or at least a top tier. When you look at it, if you was to split it in the half, 16, lower 16, upper 16, Chicago Bears in the upper 16, which isn't a bad spot to be from a defense standpoint. As we all know, defense win ball games. So I think it's just a little too early, a little too presumptuous to talk about and kind of like drag him already. Like and one of the things that was said is that he's playing against his own defense. So just imagine what's going to happen when he plays against other people's defenses. So yes, I get it, but of course that's what's going to probably happen is it's going to make it better because the defense in Chicago isn't a bad defense. So he just has to learn to read the defense, in which they said they did like some passes in which he made. He did make some good decisions. So you have to take in consideration like he's growing in it, but he did have a bad starting last week, and he was benched. So that is true. But I mean, who hasn't that happened to? Plenty of people have been benched, and then, like you say, Eric, they already practice. I get it, they're in practice, but just take in consideration that he has an opportunity to get that all those jitters. Like it's basically like they said, it was some late balls coming out, or the offense. And we say the quarterback is unfortunate. Like we talk about the quarterback and say, like, as an NCO, right? As an NCO, it was always drilled into us, or at least I know I always came across as like your soldiers are a reflection of you. Now, I don't believe that completely and wholeheartedly, but you do have to take some onus to that situation, right? Like if you're an NCO of a section, you have to be the person that's going to sit up and drive your soldiers to do, or airmen, seamen, all that, your Marine, your service member, if you're a NCO of section or you're over a section, that you have to be basically, in some instances, you do have to take some onus for what it is that is going on with your troop. Because you're supposed to be, as an NCO or the leader, you're supposed to be instilling certain things in them in which you hope resonates and it becomes a reflection of you for the most part. So it's the same thing for Caleb Williams, in my opinion, and in this offense. Like all this isn't on Caleb Williams, obviously. Like we can sit up and say, okay, he missed the window when he missed the throw, or he was late with the ball coming out and things of that nature. But there were some instances in where the offense just didn't execute as it should have, and he has to take. So, like I said, there were some throws in which was made, in which there's like when they say he came back day after day and day improved. It was just a simple fact. Of course, we're going to harp on shoot and talk about the fact, like Eric just said, interceptions in practice. It's going to happen. And what's so funny on the flip side of it, as the offense, as the defense, do you take that as a dub? Like, do you see that as an accomplishment because you were able to grab 7 interceptions consecutively against your rookie quarterback, although he was a heralded rookie quarterback? But do you take that as a win, or do you just look at it as, okay, this is our potential? Because is this Brock Purdy? Is this actually, Eric? I gotta ask you a question in the shit. I won't revert back. I just thought something, but is this Brock Purdy? Is this Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen? You know what I'm saying? Those players in any case. 7-7 pressure assault on QB, bro. These are good, but sheesh. So I get it, but just all I ask is that we chill for a second. But one thing I wanted to ask you while you're in the comments, Eric, what do you think about now your Team Skull, or the Minnesota Vikings, but your beloved Vikings, being handled by Sam Darnold. What do you just happened? What's y'all's record this year? You think with Sam Darnold at the helm, going forth potentially? Justin Jefferson back, most likely. What's as I thought, say you as I was gonna send it to you. I'm gonna send it to you because I definitely want to hear what you got to say because I know you have plenty to say about that. So just give me 1 second to hear whatever it is you have to say. Okay, you say you don't like it. We won't make the playoffs. Are y'all not going to make the playoffs because Sam Darnold, or you're not going to make the playoffs because you just don't think your team is constructed and good to go, or is it clearly because of Sam Darnold, or would you assume that y'all would make the playoffs if y'all still had Kirk Cousins? But like I said, as I know, Bishop about to come on and state his case and try to prove and make a point in which I was just talking about because he was the one who started the conversation via social media this week, himself and both Cornelius, basically, or CC as you call him, both had something to say in reference to say this. And I want to debunk what I truly would like to debunk is because even as I talk to Eric and engage with Eric back and forth, I truly want to debunk the fact that people try to say USC quarterbacks are trash. They are not trash. Evidently, they are not because they're getting ranked. Getting picked up. You said they would pay JJQB is the reason we fell off last year. That point, you know what I'm saying? But to not to diminish Kirk Cousins. He was injured, and I think y'all did actually start cooking at some point, in which I just knew we was, especially when Justin Jefferson went down in our game, that we was going to get the dub, and Jordan Addison stood up, him and Kirk Cousins, and actually I was had pulled out a couple of wins in there, tell y'all lost Cousins, and then it kind of fell apart for you late in the season, in which I thought y'all were going to be y'all had a chance to be a 1 or 2 in your divisions. Of course, that going against the Detroit Lions. What I did not expect is the Green Bay Packers to follow suit or to get back in there, especially when they lost Aaron Jones and start to have those problems. But in any case, it worked out. So, but going back to what I was just saying, right? I wanted to debunk the conversation that USC quarterbacks is trash. Like it's the conversation that always been. Correct. I get you, and I can take that. I can definitely take that. Number one pick has to play better but it always to me comes back to a separation, 5. What's that? 6 degrees of separation when you talk about Bryce Young. At one point, Bryce Young was a recruit. He was going to USC, and then he decommitted. Of course, ended up going to Alabama. But now you just seen last year as a number 1 overall pick, it didn't look too good. But CJ Stroud as a number 3 overall pick or 4 or whatever, wherever the Texans picked last year, looked immaculate. Like in which he was garnered and given the rookie offensive player of the year. Even though I think it should have went to Puka Nacua. So you know what I'm saying? You have that type of stuff. I know it keep on, in which I'm very sure a few people will talk about the illustrious butt fumble that Mark Sanchez did as when he was with the New York Jets. It could have happened to anybody. I actually don't get what the parody is in it, but okay, duly noted. So Mark Sanchez, he said the quarterbacks got rid of this guy for work. So you may be right. You might be right, Eric. They did get rid of him in Justin Fields, in which I have said before that I really would have preferred to have had Justin Fields as opposed to Trey Lance, but they chose Trey Lance. I'm assuming because of his bigger body and the ability to move. Probably they've seen it as a better option as opposed to the smaller Justin Fields. But now, of course, we look at it. Trey Lance is in Dallas. Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, being chosen as the 222nd pick in 2 years ago the draft. Mr. Irrelevant, in which now he has quarterbacked his team to a conference championship, although they didn't win. But if he had been healthy the whole time, we might have had a different outcome, as well as a Super Bowl. Again, didn't win, but it's a difference. So I can understand what you say about the Bears giving up on a quarterback, and in this case, it's another quarterback. But he's in Pittsburgh, and with that being in Pittsburgh, he might actually do something. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. The opportunity for Justin Fields to probably go and learn under the tutelage of behind Russell Wilson and given an opportunity is going to be interesting, because basically both of the quarterbacks is on a year contract, which is odd for Justin Fields. But if like, how does he get an opportunity? Does he sit up and get an extension or make his bones playing backup quarterback in or quarterback of the second string team in OTAs and practice? Because he's probably not going to get a chance to see the field. I don't think that's going to happen. So think about this. Y'all quarterback just got finished backing up Brock Purdy. So I mean, but I believe in Sam Darnold. I wasn't mad when San Francisco picked him up and took him as as their backup quarterback. So I mean, I would have preferred someone like Jacoby Brissett or someone like that, but I wasn't mad in any way, form, or fashion. He didn't get a chance to see the field that much. He played behind him, so it's just one of those things that came out. So honestly, I wasn't mad at it. So yeah, he might turn it around. Sam Darnold has he was in Carolina, and before he I had accrued the injury in Carolina, he was looking all right. Wasn't the best, but he was looking cool. And then now he ended up in San Francisco. Now he's again has earned his third starting position in Minnesota. So we'll see what he does. Hopefully he does well for y'all. I haven't took a look at what y'all schedule is and did my analysis on what y'all's projected was and what the schedule, what I think the schedule will be. However, I do think that y'all might be in danger. I don't think y'all can win y'all division. I think that belongs to Detroit for maybe the next couple of years. But I mean, stranger things have happened for the most part. But continuing on with some NFL news, of course, a suit has been filed against the NFL kicker McManus, who was kicking for the Jacksonville Jaguars at the time. That's so I would take that as an L. I'll count that as an L for the Minnesota Vikings. So, and that's not sit up and saying anything bad. I just don't know if y'all will be ready. But I mean, like I counted y'all as I counted us getting the dub against y'all last year, and y'all thoroughly thumped us. So I mean, who knows what can happen? I'm very sure. I hope Shanahan has changed the offense a little, and so there's going to be a microcosm of what Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold produced, because Sam Darnold, like I said, just left the offense, so he's probably going to see some looks and be able to recognize some things, or maybe the genius in Shanahan might mask that and do some different things, but it's kind of hard to stop C-Mac, so we'll definitely see how that ends up. So game 3, Minnesota. But as I was just saying, Jacksonville, the kickers, as we know, of course, you had Chiefs kicker Bucker had some disparaging remarks to say in reference to women, kids, stuff like that 2 weeks ago. And then just this week, Brian McManus, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is accused in a sexual assault case, as it was stated that he inappropriately engaged with 2 this on a charter flight as the team was going to play last year overseas in their international game. So it was said that basically McManus was rubbing himself up against the stewardess, that he attempted to kiss a stewardess, in which, in any case, interestingly enough, the charges have been levied that are going to be in the suit are for both McManus as well as the Jacksonville Jaguars, are as it was stated in the case, that they lack the institutional control to teach their players the appropriateness of engaging with people. So now, basically, both McManus and the Jacksonville Jaguars are named in the suit. The suit is in excess of $1 million, as well as I think it was formal training or something like that. So I guess you could say this, in a sense, is not much asked for, I guess, when you look at it, because it's a $1 billion organization. Yes, dude. Of course, when you look at it, McManus was due. I guess you look at it, the valuation, in which you don't want to put value on sexual assaults and things, atrocities towards women or anything like that. But of course, when you look at it from a standpoint, you got to take consideration, especially when you look at it from a business standpoint, is you're being sued for $1 million as well as reputation, because if this doesn't come out well, and you start to have people that start to look at your organization, because it's like, are you not paying attention, or this is what you're breeding at your organization? Because it was said that one of the victims, or alleged victims, made eye contact with the player, and the player looked like they were ashamed of what was going on. So, but yet, as we in the military, we're taught to always intervene. Of course, the IAM campaign, there was an intervention. Evidently, it was said that one of these victims decided to go up to the upper level of the plane and hid up there, so to speak, and did not come back down because they were a little thrown off and they was uncomfortable with McManus. But like I was saying, McManus at the time was only making roughly $2 to $3 million a year from the organization, and now to be hit with $1 million suit, and because of said player, especially for a player I believe that is no longer with the organization, it's like, come on, it's like this guy. So of course, I'm very sure if he was a part of the organization after everything going through, of course, due diligence has to be prevailed, and they probably would have released him. But I don't think he's no longer a part of the organization anyway. So, or if he is, it's probably going to be looked at, especially if he performed inappropriately. I mean, if he did inappropriate things as his time frame. Of course, they said one of the things that was pointed out is, as soon as they got on the charter plane, it almost seemed like it turned into a party plane as they made their trek from Jacksonville over, I think it was in the UK, for that game. So you got to take that. I mean, this is probably another conversation for another show, but the thoughts of what people do that have a little money is preposterous. Like, if I was looted, bagged up like some of the players, these moguls, CEOs, and stuff like that, I could assure you I'm not going out and doing some of the things in which they're doing. It's just I don't see the reason to, and it's just so many other things. But like I said, probably a conversation for another show, and it's wild how they continue, how it continues that way. But people are people. You can't take that away, regardless of how much money you make. You just think that the mindset becomes different. No different from being in the service. A lot of people feel like when people are in the service members, when you have service members, men and women, that you should act a certain way. And in state, what I realized and came across is that these are people too, and the same things that affect those who are not trained to be disciplined and have honor, respect, duty, loyalty, personal integrity, and all that type of stuff, are not susceptible to the fact, because they put on a uniform, and represent the nation. It's just a fact of life. What else do we have in this? The as we talked about with the Eagles last week, the Ross player, wide receiver, John Ross, signed with the Eagles, so he earned the tryout. Excuse me. I know something I wanted to engage on. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. In which moving on from the pro pigskin to the college pigskin. So, and then we'll talk about a little college basketball. And then hopefully by that time we'll be at the top of the hour, so we can bring in Coach Alex Miller. So, as we all know, the NCAA with the F has had a huge undertaking when you talk about the CFP or the college football playoff series in which that's how they determine who's going to play for the national championship in college football, right? So of course, we had the BCS that fell apart and faltered at some point. They went from the BCS to what is now the CFP. When you take the top 4 teams voted on by a committee and put them in a 14 tournament, and instead you get a winner at the end of it. So now, of course, with times are changing, they have decided to go, and this is the year where the 12-team playoff starts. Still the same CFP, just added 12 teams that has a little bit of a different feel to it now. So, of course, when you look at it in the past, you always have wondered, like, what ifs, right? So, a couple of times in the last couple of years, there has been some blowouts in these top tier games in which it has been stated if there would have been other teams probably added, this would have been different, or this could have been a different outcome and things of that nature, however you want to spin it, right? So, like I said, same type of CFP, but different spin to it, right? So at one point when the CFP was first initially reestablished, the second CFP or the last one, the extended one with the 12-team format, there was initially 4 teams. 5 power conferences, and then of course you have the other 5, in which there was expected to be a champion or someone determined from there. Of course, you fast forward now to 2024, the 24-25 season coming up. There are now only 4 power conferences, being the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC. Because now the Pac-12 is no longer around, because those teams have split between the other 3 different conferences. And now for this year, the final 2 Pac-12 teams that did not go to conferences are playing in the Mountain West, being Oregon State and I believe Washington State are playing in the MCWC, as 3 went to the ACC. Another I think 4 went to the SEC, and the other 3 went to the Big 12. So now, of course, who qualifies for the CFP? Of course, this is all getting the information from the ESPN.com, as Heather Dinwiddie reported and did a piece. So now, to get some understanding of how the CFP is going to go, so you can know where your favorite college football team is going to be at the end of this, potentially in-state. Just like Al Davis used to say, all you got to do is just win, baby. That's what it comes down to say. But in any case, like I said before, there were initially 5 teams and the 5 conferences in which were supposed to be pooled 5 championships, and then the other 7 teams are going to be the highest ranked teams from any of those spots. But now that has changed a little bit, since now the Pac-12 is gone. So now the rules basically are looking to guarantee at least 4 spots in the guarantee 4 spots for the champions of the Big 4. So that's the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Big 10. Whoever wins the conference championship for those 4 conferences is likely to get an automatic bid into the second round because they're going to be a bye. They're going to receive a bye into the second round. So that's the 4. The other 8 teams are going to be at larges. Of course, one of those other 8 teams is going to be coming from the other 5 conferences, which means the top highest ranked champion from the Mountain West, American Athletic Conference, Sun Belt, Mid-American, and Conference USA are going to get a big automatic bid into the tournament, but they're going to be a lower tier team. So they might be like a 12th rank as a conference champion. They might be the 12th ranked team, maybe, possibly, which how it could be. So that is basically how the teams are going to qualify. Now, the seeding basically is going to work by, like I said, the top 4 get an automatic bid in which they'll receive first round buys. The other 8 would be placed in a in their rankings. So what we do not want to misconstrue is how the rankings are going to go. So just because a team was ranked second in the college CFP poll does not mean they're a second seeded team, because presumably it could be something like who was like the Georgia University UGA as the number 1 seed losing to LSU in their conference championship game. So UGA now from that loss can go from being a number 1 seed to from being a number 1 team in the conference to being a number 3 team in the conference, and the LSU can now be the number 4 ranked take in the CFP, but they won the conference, so they're going to probably be one. They're going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 for their for the bowl, which means for the CFP, which means Georgia now is going to be although they are ranked ahead of them now, Georgia can end up being a 5th seed or a 6th seed or 7th seed, even though they're ranked higher than the other 4, if that makes sense. So it's not to be misconstrued. Although starting November 5th is when the CFP conference CFP rankings started getting pushed out. So that is when we'll start to get like a picture of who is being seen as the top teams. Like you said, they're ranked the top 12 teams, in which not the top 12, they ranked all the teams in which they determined the top 25. But of course, their top 12 are going to be a kind of like an insider look at who is expected to be in the playoff, I guess you could say, in a sense. Some sort of speak how, if you pay attention or watch how the National Military Basketball Tournament kind of like does the rankings for my coach Richardson. He kind of like takes a look. Him and the committee come up and take a look at the players and the defenses and the player in the offenses and the teams, and he builds a top 20, 25 of the players in determining who it is, and it kind of gives you a precursor of potentially what you can see if the tournament was to start at a certain time based on the rankings. So that's keep that in mind. Any independent that does not play in a top 20 in a conference and cannot win a conference championship does not get an automatic bid. So let's take in consideration the 3 teams: Notre Dame, as I stated before, Washington State, or Washington State, Oregon State. None of those 3 teams are able to get an automatic bye because they are playing in conferences, i.e. the Mountain West Conference for the Oregon State and Washington State, and Notre Dame is playing under the banner with the ACC, but they're not a part of those conferences. Therefore, they can't win conference championships. So they don't get, though they can get into the playoffs, they cannot get an automatic bid or bye to the second round per the NCAA rules. So of course, what is going off when you look at the bracket currently coming up, the first round will be played on the on the 20th of December, which will put the 12th seed against the 5th seed, 10th seed against the 7th, 9th against the 8th, and of course the 11th seed versus the 6th seed. The quarterfinals will resume the following week on the 31st, or New Year's Eve, and the January 1st, in which now you will see the second round, which your conference champions will be playing against the other teams that have lasted or been able to make it through. That'll place the 4th seed against the 12th or 5th seed, depending on who wins. The number 1 seed, of course, with the 9th or 8th seed. The number 3 seed will play the 11th or 6th seed. And the last but not least, the 2nd seed will be playing the 10th or 7th seed, depending on who the winners are. So the semifinal games will be played in the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl on the following week, being that Thursday and Friday, which will be the 9th and 10th, which of course will put the winners of the before games in those two semifinal games. And of course, the national championship will be played against the last team standing on the 20th of January in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So, of course, going back to Atlanta, do we see a situation where Georgia is back in the national championship game again, playing at home in the front of the home team, the home squad, the home fans, trying to exact another victory? Was that 2 of 3 in the last 4 years? I don't know. We'll see. We do know it's a possibility because there's all the moving around, but we might see a different type of environment. Like you have added Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, which makes it a little bit different. They're going to have their schedules going to change a little bit. In the Big Ten, you've added Oregon, USC, UCLA, and who else was it? Oregon, USC, UCLA, and it's slipping my mind at this time. Hold up, let me do my make sure I'm tracking. I have to see, but in case you've added new players, new teams to these conferences, so it's going to be a little bit of a shift. Now these players might make it up. You might get Michigan and USC play. Does USC knock off Michigan and make it to where Michigan has an early loss? Maybe, possibly, that's a possibility. USC additionally also plays LSU this year, in which I think that's one of the kickoff games is LSU versus USC. We can see it what that outcome is going to be. How that comes, that's definitely going to have some play on the CFP, because now they have to take in consideration of these strength of schedules, which brings us to what we need to know about the committee. So basically, the committee is made up of 13 former players, athletic directors, sports writers, or whatever case like that. So the ratio to breakdown is there are 6 former coaches and players in the group of these 12. 6 sitting athletic directors representing the 7 conferences, including, like I said, the 4 conferences, including the 4 Power 4 conferences, and 1 former sports writer. So for this upcoming selection committee, there's going to be a total of 3 years in which they have to make a commitment to, in which I'm very sure there are some things in place if there's a reason why someone needs to be removed from the committee. But of course, the committee is chaired by Michigan Athletic Director Wade Manuel. And then additionally, other committee members are former North Carolina coach Chris Ault, Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuck, former Wake Forest coach Jim Grove, Miami, Ohio's Athletic Director David Saylor, Baylor Athletic Director Mark Rose, former Toledo, Missouri coach Gary Pinkel, former All-American Nebraskan lineman Will Shields, former sports writer Kelly Whiteside, former Arizona State All-American guard Randall McDaniel, Virginia Athletic Director Carla Williams, Arkansas Athletic Director in Hunter Yurchek, and former Oregon State and Nebraska coach Mike Riley. So that is who makes up the committee for this coming year. So those are going to be the individuals for the next 3 years that are going to be determining who the top 12 teams are after the 5th of November, and determining and have a look at who potentially is going to be in this tournament. First, the inaugural tournament. Like I said, it's a 3-year commitment to the committee. Basically, they would meet on Mondays and part of Tuesday morning to determine each of their the rankings, which goes on for 6 weeks after November 5th. So they have this job. They're going to meet at least twice a week for 6 weeks starting November 5th. So of course, when taking a look at it, some of the protocols are going to take into consideration, especially when there's circumstances that they indicate to be comparable for the committee. They already have some guidelines in which they're going to take in. One is going to be if the team won a championship, being their division, their conference, or even division, like their division conference or conference championship, their strength of schedule, and of course head-to-head competition. There will be some outcomes, comparative outcomes, when you take in consideration common opponents without incentivizing a margin of victory. So if you played or didn't play someone and blew them out or didn't blow them out, they're not going to take that in consideration when you to incentivize your margin of victory. A lack of is just your play. Some other relevant factors that they may take into accountability is, of course, the loss of key players or the addition of coaches, which affected the teams and performance. I think that basically, honestly, really speaks to, let's say, FSU, right? FSU this year was a top 4 candidate. They probably should have been in the CFP. However, they lost their starting quarterback, and then they lost some key players. And then once it was all said and done, when they didn't get into the CFP, then they basically a lot of players decide not to play in the bowl game, which diminished them even a little bit more. So that in those cases, again, it's all about the mighty dollar, in my opinion, and what ratings are going to bring in. You want to put the top teams' performance up against each other. Hence the reason why the Florida State Seminoles were not able to compete this year. It just wasn't going to happen. Think about if they've been in the CFP, what potentially could have happened. Now, I could understand if it was a 12-team playoff, then you give them opportunity. But from a business model, I can understand why they weren't afforded the opportunity to play. It just wasn't going to be competitive at the end state. And that has to be seen. They remove all the emotions away. They wasn't presumed to be a competitive team. And if you look at the play in which they did after the fact, they honestly weren't competitive. So it kind of like it was a good call, in my opinion. That's just my perspective of it, especially when you look at a business model. Like you have to take in consideration, like, was this team going to be competitive? And in the in-state, they weren't when you look at the teams they play after the fact. And we was talking about playing against some of the top teams in the country. It just wasn't going to work out. So there is a recusal policy. So if there is a person on the committee that is being paid by their institution that is in the top, or has a family member that goes there, or provides services to that institution, they have to recuse themselves from the voting. So what happens is that member is not allowed to vote for the teams that are allowed, but on to only answer factual questions in order to see how to answer any questions that's going to basically potentially put that institution in the runnings, right? So the member is not allowed to be in the room during the deliberations in reference to that team selection or seating. Then they also aren't allowed to participate in any discussions that about any bowl games when it comes to that team. So basically, they're trying to make sure to keep it on the up and up. So there's no one that's kind of like petitioning or trying to make basically making it to argumentative points in reference to these institutions, because of course you want your team to be in and to do that. The voting basically is going to be done electronically, and the members are have individual devices in which they can cast a secret vote, and nobody knows how anyone else is voting. So there's no transparency in the voting. There's going to be a vote. they're going to start in small pools, and they'll do their voting and their number base. I think it goes through 7 rounds, and after the 7th round, based on the voting, everyone to determine who the top 25 teams are. So basically, a computer takes the statistics based on how they're entered, and then once they're finalized after 7 rounds, then you basically determine, okay, this is who your top 25 is. So the metrics that it was going to go off is no particular metric that ends any spot for one team over another. Everything is all subjective analysis, where all the statistics are going to be compiled, in which they're going to be broken down by sports sorts and analytics, to where it gives you the data, so that way they can make a clear and concise point, as i.e. how many teams, what the team's record was against current top 25 teams, what they were against like teams, and things of that nature, so you can get a picture of what's going on and who's doing what, and so it can be all come out to where it's like, okay, we're good. So of course, I think that makes sense in a sense, especially when you have more quantitative data to be able to be like, okay, well, actually, I think that's qualitative data, to where you can see and be like, I can see the head to heads. I mean, you can kind of like see a head to head without them actually going head to head. Like you can kind of get a snapshot of what their performances are, especially when you're talking about top 25. But of course, it can be a little minuscule at times, because although with the top 4, there's more chances for it to be better competition. But of course, with those non-conference games, is going to basically make a difference. Like someone like USC right now has a non-conference game against LSU and Notre Dame, in which presumably both those teams can be top 25 candidates, as well as USC has to play other top 25 candidates, as such as Penn State, Michigan, maybe Oregon. So presumably they can have 6 or 7 top 25 candidates on their record, and that goes well for them. But someone else, such as, let's say now, Arizona, well, not Arizona, because they're in the Big 10, I mean the Big 12. Someone like Washington, right, in which they don't have that. Notre Dame plays in a ACC for football, and I think basketball as well, but they're not considered to be a part of that or that conference. They're still considered to be an independent. So that doesn't go well from them. So, I mean, of course, I'm very sure everyone gets the picture. So continue on and let it know the teams are basically assigned to the games, or how they're assigned. Like we said, the New Year's Six Bowl games, which were the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Fiesta, and Peach Bowl, are still part of the CFP, in which they are basically still gets the run of the mill, where they're selected, of course, the year in, year out, on who's going to hold it, and then we know which game is going to be considered the national championship game. Of course, the number 1 seeds will earn preferential treatment for any bowl slot, but not would be put to a geographical disadvantage. The Sugar Bowl, of course, has a contractual agreement with SEC and Big 12, while the Rose Bowl maintains their relationship with the Big 10 and what was the Pac-12. But there's no Pac-12, so I don't know if that's going to basically fall off to where it's going to be given to the Big 10, or the teams in general that were of Pac-12 relation. So I guess it's still all subjective. So basically, that is a nutshell of what you have going forth when we talk about the CFP. So I'm kind of excited and looking forward to seeing how this is going to plan out. Hopefully, my Trojans are going to have a opportunity to compete in the Big 12. Big 10. Compete in the Big 10, to where we get to see what they're really made of, ushering a new time frame, competing against upper tier. Now you have the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, Wisconsins. Purdue has been dominant at times. Now you get a chance to see what they're going to basically get into. So, of course, like I said, no further ado. At the top of the hour, like I said, we're going to have a special guest. It's a guest that no one that y'all are, the most of y'all are uh, not a stranger of. Coach Millard from CMB. Hold on, let me put some respect on the name. The 2024 NBA Military Basketball Association champions, Colorado Military Basketball. Coach, what's good with you this morning?
Man, good. Glad you got home. Got home. My family had a little celebration for us. It's good, man. It's a good weekend.
So I'll be first to apologize for my ignorance over the course of the weekend. Of course, you don't have social media, so you were not able to see. So when I posted it, when I seen the top, the brackets that was coming out, one of the posts that I put out was, what we will not see is another repeat of last year, where it would have been CMB versus Luke, of course,
Right.
like last year. I was like, because y'all eventually end up meeting the 2 rounds before that. And so I was asked by Coach Mason, who do I see? Because I said that we won't see that match, but we could potentially see any matchup, pretty good matchups. Of course, Coach Mason, coach for Cannon, asked me who was it that I was going to see. So I went off because I was under first formation. I went off and went to my personal account and responded back. And my thing was, I said it would be the Final Four. I had listed as Cavazos, Ramstein, Cannon, and I had Luke. But I really wanted. I didn't want to do the whole monologue of all. Saying this because honestly, I feel it was a toss up between CMB and Luke for the most part, and it was more of a coin flip of who the two would be, based like that. And that's before I knew that, in which I'm very sure we're gonna get into it, that y'all were kind of shorthanded going into to this to Philadelphia, and which I think it was a couple other teams as well. But y'all were shorthanded or any of that. So of course, my some apologies. I don't know what I was thinking to think that what I'm saying y'all would be in that position, but. Give us a rundown. What was the weekend like?
Yeah, the weekend. I mean, we started the first game. Jakari had a flight delay, so our first game I had 5 players, and then I was suiting up.
I thought I seen you in shorts. Okay.
So we played Scott the first game, and they were solid. We hadn't seen them all year. They shot the ball really well. We kind of knew, when anybody plays CMB, we kind of get their best punch. So we won that one. It's we kind of had control most of the game. They made a little run, and then we answered back and, put that one out of reach. And then second game, we got Herbert Field, who they were also shorthanded. Timo's on that team. Jacob Hurt, he was playing as well. And they had a pretty physical game with Camp Pendleton, and they were also shorthanded, but the Marines are just always physical, So I was like, okay, well, they just had a hard game. I think the coach got stitches in between his eyes here, and they came in, they already looked beat up, and so we ended up blowing them out. And then the way the schedule worked, we didn't have to play again until 7:00 the next night. So we were just sitting there kind of waiting in the quarterfinals. And we were, obviously watching a lot of the games. I saw Cannon end up pulling out one and beat Luke by 2. And so I was like, oh, this is going to mess up the brackets a little bit. And then Miramar had to take a forfeit on their first game. And so Ramstein kind of moved over. And then they beat Cavazos. So I was like, oh, well, this is going a little different than I predicted. And so when that happened, that ended up putting Luke and Cavazos on my side, on my side of the pool, and really on my line, right? So I had a semifinal. I had a quarterfinal game against Luke. I was like, dang, in the quarterfinals already. I thought I would get them or Cavazos in the Final Four, and so that was a tough game. It's always tough with Luke. They don't really beat themselves. It was a back and forth game. We pretty much had to lead most of the game, and then just in the fourth, we were able to kind of create some separation. And put that one away, which, was good, and then we knew we were going to have Cavazos the next game. So it was already our revenge tour, right? Like we owed Luke one. We owed Cavazos one from losing at conference, And then it just kind of panned out that Cannon, when you look at the top of the bracket, it was like Cannon had Scott, and then they had West Texas who had beat Ramstein. But I was, if you gave me the option of it, I'm going to play Scott in West Texas before I play Luke and Cavazos to go to a championship, And so the Cavazos game, we caught fire and we shot the lights off the ball. We were up 20 plus points in that game. And we came out and I think we hit 4 or 5 threes to start the game, and so we really got off to a good start, because when we lost them at conference, I felt like that was the issue, right? We didn't play with our pace and we let them dictate the pace of the game, and we weren't moving the ball and we didn't shoot the ball well. And so we really came out and took control of that game early. And so we knew we had to, because Haley had destroyed us inside last time. It was just, we didn't have a matchup for him. And so I kind of took, in the Luke game, I was like, okay, if I can stop Sutton, make it harder on him, be physical with him, I think we can get Luke. And then when we went to play Cavazos, I was like, same thing. If I can play physical with Haley, he's going to get his. They're both going to get theirs. They're good players, But if we can limit what they're trying to do and make it difficult on them, hit them here, hit them there a little bit, just make them a little more uncomfortable. And then, the refs were letting us play physical. So it ended up working out, and that was kind of my whole intent. Is like, okay, I'll come off the bench and I just come in here and, make things uncomfortable for some of their bigs. Okay. And so it worked out for us. And then the Cannon game was, it's always a good game with them because we see each other kind of a lot. They're down the road. They were shorthanded. By that game, they only had 6 guys. One of the guys that got hurt in their Final Four matchup. And then first quarter, feeling out. We were up 3. We had an abysmal second quarter where, we were down 8 at halftime. So when you look at the game, we won 3 of the 4 quarters. We just played terrible the second quarter, and we played terrible. So when I say we played terrible, they outscored us by 11 that quarter, right? Like, because they were up 8 at halftime. Third quarter comes out, they go on a run. I think they get it up to as much as 16. So we call a timeout, and we're like, look, we're gonna go now, or we're gonna pack it in. What are we gonna do? I was like, we need to get this down to 5 to 7 before the end of the third. And so we ended up getting it down to 5. So then when you look at that, we won that quarter. And then the fourth quarter, I think we went up by as much as 8 at one point in the fourth. And it just came down to hitting free throws at the end of the game. And so they just kind of gassed out a little more than we did. And we kind of started clamping up defensively, and then we finally started hitting some shots. And I just think they couldn't keep up with the pace at that point. So
it sounds like some of the similar things in which happened last year in the championship game. It's just you were on the opposite end of the W of the loss, right, as opposed to. But it sounds like exactly same thing when we talk later on. Some of the same stuff coming down. So being it was in Philadelphia, the NBA went and did everything they had to do. What did you think? Because it sounds like you didn't particularly care for the format. Was there any problem with the format this time around? I know it was different from before.
I think the format's fine. I think a lot of people don't like that if you win your pool play, you basically sit out 2 games, right, to the quarterfinals. So it's like, some people like the Nationals format where, maybe you play all 3 teams in your pool and then the bottom 2 teams are eliminated all together. I think it gives you an opportunity, I guess, if you play your 2 games, say you lose them both, you still get an opportunity to come back in and win the whole thing, But I like, we played at Nationals, we played at the NBA Finals, both formats, as long as you go and you handle your business, you're going to be where you want to be, I preach to my team, it's no matter how ugly it is, always win your first game of the tournament.
Okay.
So you don't put yourself in a hole. No matter what the format is, if you lose your first game, you're putting yourself in a hole. So we always come ready to play that first game, right? Whether it's ugly, whether we win in a blowout or we win by 1, I don't care. And then we throw that game out, right? We throw that game out because then you can start clicking there going forward, kind of feel out the gym, feel out the rims, feel out the atmosphere. It's a whole different thing, you just traveled, whatever it is. So this one works out for us. The last 2 years, we won our pool play 2-0, and we're sitting there in the quarterfinal waiting. But last year my quarterfinal game was against a team that was shorthanded. They only had 5. The coach was playing, and we won by 40, 50 points. This year, my quarterfinal game was against Luke, the defending champ. So it's like, we had both ends of the spectrum there. So I can't really say that anybody that didn't like the format, I can't really say that format benefited me this year. Last year, sure. Yes, it did. This year, absolutely not. There ain't no way. You give me Luke, then you give me Cavazos, who beat me at conference, and then so I wouldn't say that format benefited me. And then at nationals, we advanced, and I advanced to play a West Coast elite team that had already beat me, and play again at 8 a.m. So that I didn't like that format either, right? Like I didn't like the fact that I had 3 8 a.m. games, right? And then the first round of the playoffs at that format, you give me Langley.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, damn. Like my first games in both tournaments, you give me Langley and you give me Luke. The 2 defending champs of both tournaments. I get it. So that's when I look at it as like people, they talk about CMB, and when you look at it this year, we went through everybody. Every juggernaut that's been out there that you put out there, we went through this year in one tournament or another. And so I think that's what makes this year a little better for us is it was kind of like we got our get back on a lot of people this year. Langley had got us twice. Great team. We got them, Luke got us, last year. We played them out in San Diego earlier this year. They got us, and again, we were shorthanded that tournament, but I don't never look at that, right? Like we were shorthanded at the finals too, but we were able to come together on this one. Cavazos got us. We got them back, Cannon's funny. I don't know if you heard, they were like, after we won the Final Four game, they were like, oh, is there a little bit of rivalry between you and Cannon? And I'm like, Coach Mace wants there to be, right? But there's not, like I told him, I said, you got to win something first, for there to be a rivalry, right? Like it's not a rivalry if you can't win, like they beat us once this season, right after the Puerto Rico tournament. We went to the Puerto Rico tournament, played 5 games out there, came back, played a club team on a Wednesday night, played Peterson on Saturday morning, played Cannon on a back-to-back, our 7th game within a week, our 7th game, and they got us by like 6. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you beat us, but then, they're a very good team. But when you look at the historical data of it, it's like, I'll lose in a regular season. That's fine. You're going to take some L's, but when the games mattered at conference, they came out, we beat them by 15. Just played you for the NBA finals. Y'all thought y'all had us. You know what I'm saying? You were up 16 over there. Mace was smiling, happy. Y'all lost that too. So where is the rivalry to me? You know what I'm saying? Like right now, we're the boogeyman for Cannon. You know what I'm saying? Like we used to have our own boogeymans. Pendleton was one for us that we had to get through last year. And so until they can like definitively beat us, everything comes through Colorado. It don't matter.
So, in which I saw some of Mace's posts. So, what did you think? What did you think of the field this year? Like, I hear what you talk about. You feel like it was more like outside of your path to the finals and obviously the championship. You felt like it probably was easier for other teams. Do you think there was a misdistribution of the teams, or did it just happen like that because of how they played? It looked good initially, and then
I think it just happened, right? Like teams didn't handle their business. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to win the games that you're supposed to win. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes there's trap games, where it's just not set up for you, where you got to find your way to win games. And I know Cannon's pool was hard. Cannon kind of, when I say they had an easier path to the championship, yes, but they didn't have an easier pool play, right? Like,
correct. Okay.
I think their first game was Riley. I thought Riley they weren't a sleeper team to me, right? I thought Riley could have made some noise, and I don't know what happened to them this last weekend, but they didn't play the way that I've seen them play. And so that ended up being an easier game for them. But then after that, you get Luke. and that was a battle, and they ended up pulling it out. I think if Luke wins that game and Cannon does, like it changes a lot of things, right? But Cannon was able to pull it out, and so they set themselves up, and in fact, they earned that easier route up there, and so the Miramar situation with them taking a first game forfeit for not some flights and delays and stuff like that. That put Ramstein into a different trajectory, and I'm not saying Ramstein may not have beat Miramar or Miramar wouldn't have beat them. I don't know. But, then that could have been a different matchup, right? For Cavazos. Cavazos might beat Miramar, and then they two in it. So there's things, my Final Four before we went down there, I was thinking it was going to be Luke, Cavazos, us, and Fort Moore or whoever they had played there. I thought Fort Moore might get back there. And so that's kind of what I was expecting. I think the games were a lot more competitive this year when I was walking the courts. There'd be games, fourth quarter, 2-3 minutes left, 2, 3, 4-point game. Every game, it was close. There wasn't a lot of blowouts this year. And part of that also came down to the shot clocks malfunctioned. So, some teams would get up and they were holding the ball, or they were stalling, or they would run their sets longer, or and it's smart, right? But at the same time, it doesn't, the shot clock can play a big part in stuff, it sucks when you're sitting there playing defense for 45 seconds, a minute, and you're like, dang. Luke was very disciplined. They ran their set every time. Ran a set. I'm like, man, we're playing defense for 45 seconds, and then get a stop, or then they get a break and they get the ball back. And it's like, you be on defense for 2 minutes here, it seems like. And so I think that also contributed to some of the games being closer because, you could really slow the game down a lot versus, shot clock, like, you got to get a shot up or all going the other way. And so that kind of contributed to some of the scores, I think. There were some really good games, like the Ramstein West Texas game. I think it was a 1 point. I think West Texas won by 1. I mean, I was able to catch the end of it after our game, and I credit to West Texas. I didn't think they would beat Ramstein. Definitely didn't. No, and then in Ramstein, they were the fresher team. It was only their second game in the tournament, but at the same time, you just came from Europe. Like, having to take that forfeit against Miramar probably didn't help them, because you want to get games in, you want to get your guys up and down. You kind of want to get rid of that jet lag. And so kind of probably sucked for them having to take that first forfeit. But at the same time, if they had won that and handled West Texas, now they sit in, in the Final Four, having only played 2 games. So, I mean, it could have went either way. But I was just glad that the way it played out for us is we got to go through the teams that we wanted to play, right? Like, we wanted to play Luke. We wanted to play Cavazos again. I never want to play Cannon. I mean, it's like big brother, little brother stuff. Like, we don't, I when I saw Cannon again, I was like, oh, we can win this whole thing. I just, it seems like we find ways to beat them all the time. And so
I saw that, and I saw what Jason posted where he was like, it's an all CUSME Final Four. When you seen that, does that to you, was it like, oh yeah, this is money in the bank at this point? Or did you have a feeling of, this is the same people I see, this is going to probably be a little harder than what I expected?
Yes and no. Cavazos, I felt like we lost conference, right? Like, they beat us, but we lost it. So I was like, we wanted that one back. Okay. So I knew we could beat them. And then Cannon, like I said, we knew we could beat them. And then West Texas, I really was hoping West Texas was going to beat Cannon, because then I really felt like it was in the bag for sure. Like, West Texas for us is a very good matchup for us because we can switch everything. Last time we played them out in Puerto Rico, we put it on them bad. So I wanted, we were like, if West Texas can pull out another one, this, the ratings weren't going to be very good for the final on that one. But I didn't see Cannon losing to West Texas. There was no way. West Texas had a great run, but kind of in the end, everything kind of plays out the way it should. And then I just thought we were more battle tested at that point, like going through the teams we went through to get there. And honestly, it started at Nationals. You know, at Nationals, we really started clicking. Now, Nationals kind of hurt us. We kind of sold out to try to win Nationals. And that's why we ended up coming shorthanded, is because we had guys still beat up, still hurt from Nationals, you know. And so that's why we ended up shorthanded down at the NBA Finals, right? And then obviously we ended up runner-up at Nationals, which you never like losing in the championship, but to finish runner-up at Nationals, when if you would ask people for a Final Four before we got to Nationals, ain't nobody have CMB in there. Like, yeah, they get the 2 seed going down there, but come on, man. Like, we done played everybody tough. Even last season, you know, we ain't never get blown out. You know, I don't think people realize what we have in Colorado, and so they don't give us the same credit they give some of these other teams, you know. And hopefully that changes now. You know, I think any coach right now would take my season, you know, at the end, like run up at Nationals and win an NBA Finals championship. I think any coach would take that. And we did them both with 7 guys. So it's like when people talk about, oh, we're shorthanded, I'm like, we don't want to hear that. Like, that's just another excuse for why you lost.
So basically, of course, which we can't do anything about, but so for it sounds like for the most part, a vast majority of the field was shorthanded in the sense due to injuries or whatever.
Of the teams that we played, Herbert was shorthanded and Cannon was shorthanded. Luke had a bench. You know, they were rotating guys through, trying to wear us out down. So Luke had a bench. Cavazos had a bench. Cannon was shorthanded. So when you look at it, Luke and Cavazos both had a bench. You know, now those teams may have been missing some guys that were more key contributors at one point or another during the season. But that's just the way, you know, that's just the way it happens. You know, guys get hurt, guys got, you know, work commitments, family commitments. And so I could say the same thing about when I went to Nationals, you know. My big man, all Air Force, all USA guy, Abe Kinrad. You know, non-contact, tears his ACL, MCL, meniscus. He's like, oh, well, if Abe don't get hurt, and if AJ Walker, you know, ends up being able to make it to it, but he had a family commitment, you know, which we prioritize over this. So, you know, if you're like, oh, if I have a healthy Abe and an AJ Walker there, 2 all Armed Force players, we walk through Nationals. You know, and I don't think anybody can dispute that, you know. I mean, we lost to Fort Sam, but when you look at warm-ups, you look at the game, well, we got guys limping on the court. And I'm not saying their guys weren't hurt or beat up, but they didn't go through the route that we went to get to that game, period. And so, you know, I've heard people, I was missing this guy, I was missing that guy. None of that matters, man. You got to play with who's there, and sometimes it's just not your day. But luckily for us, the last 2 tournaments, we've been able to have everybody locked in and play a certain brand of basketball that we can stay competitive in every game. So
now you have, of course, over the course of the last 2-3 years since taking over CMB, basically have showed that y'all are a team to be reckoned with, winning, being the runner-up last year in the NBA Finals, winning the NBA Finals this year, being a runner-up last year and this year in the NMBT or the Nationals, winning the Puerto Rican Classic. What is next for CMB now that, okay, I know they have the Summer League, and of course you have the Battle of the Shields that's coming up. Will CMB be in any of those games, or is this a rest period?
So CMB is going to go to Orlando.
Okay.
We're going to go to that, and then I think honestly after that, that's it for CMB, man. I think we're at least for me, man, I think I'm done after this.
Okay.
I'm done altogether. Coaching wise, most likely playing wise. I mean, it's a lot of how do you say it? There's a lot of politics on the back end of this, man. When you're a coach and you deal with a lot of the day-to-day stuff and a lot of personalities and people, and especially when you're CMB, man, we claimed Fort Carson this year, but Fort Carson, they didn't claim us, right? We don't have an installation support. Everybody's like NWR teams. Well, this is the Miller Welfare Recreation Fund here. That's what it is, and I think, yes, the military basketball is about service members to some of us. It's not all of us, right? Some coaches, some teams, they want people to fit into this mold, right?
Mhm.
I almost every tournament I went to this year, my roster got protested.
Oh, wow.
How did my roster get protested every single tournament when every one of my guys is active duty? Every single player on my roster is active duty from either Fort Carson or was from the Air Force Academy. And except for we had one guy up at FE where FE won. Every guy was active duty. How I show up to a tournament, first game before a jump ball, a coach protests my roster that I'm not even playing for a guy that he knows is an active duty guy stationed on Fort Carson. The base that they made me claim, basically. And I followed every rule that the NBA put out this year. I played by every rule that they had. You get 3 exceptions in the NBA. So claim Fort Carson means all our guys got to be from Fort Carson except for 3. Did that, right? Even Michael Argyle, dang near a founding member of CMB. They made me use him as an exemption this year because he wasn't from Fort Carson. So I said, all right, cool. There's one of my exemptions. Camden Vanderswag, exemption from the academy. Cool, got it. Now I picked up Draylon Perkins from FE1. There's my 3rd exemption. Everybody else was from Fort Carson. So I played by the same rule everybody else did, but yet my roster got protested nonstop. Got guys saying, oh, this guy didn't play. I had to bring out my guy's medical thing, showing that he had an injury, just to show why he couldn't make 8 games during the season, when everybody knows he's stationed at Fort Carson active duty. It just, when it comes down to that, it's like, are we doing this for service members or, and an outlet for veterans and a message, or are y'all really trying to do this for competitive advantages and try to figure out how you can beat CMB or how you can, make yourself look good or whatever it is at that point. At that point, it's not about service members for me no more. I done put more money, I'm not going to say more time, but guaranteed more money than any coach, any program in the military basketball. I ain't got 1 cent from any MWR. We don't practice on any base. I pay for all uniforms, paid for. Practice facility, paid for. Travel, paid for. And then people mad about how we travel. Oh, y'all took a private flight. Okay. What does that mean to you? At the end of the day, we showed up and we played, and you mad because you lost to us because you didn't think this team from Colorado could compete with some of y'all. And not only have we been competing, we've been winning a lot of stuff. Or right there in the conversation every time. And I'm playing by all the same rules they are. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go down to Orlando. I got something for them in Orlando too.
Okay.
But the difference is I don't go on social media. I don't go online. I don't go online talking about everything that happens, about who I'm bringing, what we're going to do to people. We just show up and hoop. I got receipts from last year, right? Coaches saying, they just got you to fill the book out. We know we're not losing to y'all, at least not because of coaching, because all y'all do is play pickup ball. Well, you know what? I got the best damn pickup ball basketball team in the military then. We can show up to any gym with our 5, 6, 7 guys, and we're going to beat you. We won't run a set. Yeah, I'll fill the book out. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to fill the book out and I'm going to take my trophies home. So it's like, so what is it here? I can't coach of the year voting. Let me tell you this. Coach of the year voting. Look at my record over the last 2 seasons. I'm 65-10 or something. And this is all voted on by your peers, right?
Yeah.
1 vote for coach of the year. 1? How many of y'all want to trade your season for mine now? Come on. 1 vote, but I'm not a coach, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? And I all the coaches, I got respect for all of them because I know every coach puts in their time and their effort and with their guys and their players. And, it's all love when you see them. But on the backside of it, we voting for people based off their name, or we voting for people based off their team's performance on the floor? You know, I went through 2 coaches of the year and 2 conference champions to win this one. And I love both those guys. I think they both amazing coaches. I think they're both amazing people. I've learned from – I'll tell you right now, Fort Cavazos beat us because they stayed attacking the rim when they played us. So when we went to Nationals, we went down there with that same – as everything to the rim, everything to the rim. Let the rest call stuff. You know, and then when we get hot, when we start shooting the ball, it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Luke is in every game because they run their stuff. They stay consistent. They stay together. You don't never see their players fighting. You don't never say, hey, we need to be a team that's together. I think we had the best chemistry this year of any team that I've been a part of. You know, our 7-8 guys. We got down against Cannon, called time. We said, hey, halftime. Wasn't nobody mad. We said, hey, we got to play better, guys. All of us collectively need to pick each other up and play better. And this game is going to turn. And as soon as it turned, it just kept clicking. It kept clicking. I mean, you watch the game. I rewatched the game last night when I got home. You could see where it changes. Our defensive intensity picked up. We're playing for each other. We're moving. The ball starts whipping around. And sometimes when you're just playing for each other and ain't no set you can't coach that, right? When you're playing for each other and the ball's moving and you're just making the next basketball play, I'll take that over any offense that any of these coaches can put in. Like, because I've also played against teams where they so set on A to B and we blow their screen up and now they can't get from A to B. They don't know how to play basketball no more. It's like that's really all it was for us is play basketball. I'll tell everybody right now, since Nationals, we ain't had one practice. We were too beat up. It was more important for us to rest and recover since Nationals than to have a practice. Now, guys got shots up on their own, and we got some cardio in, but I hadn't seen those guys since Nationals. And I bet most of y'all were in the gym 2-3 times a week. But because we came together in the way we play and how we play for each other, we were able to still get to where we wanted to be. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I enjoy doing this. I came back doing this because, you know, when I go out to Pendleton or I go to these tournaments and I see my old Marine brothers, I see guys that I played all Marine with. I see some coaches that I played for. I've met a lot of great players, you know, back coming to it and coaches. I love that side of it. You know, but when I got to get calls and text messages and answer questions about why is this guy playing or what this guy should be playing for this base because that base is 2 miles closer than you are. And it's like, come on, bro. Like, we're just trying to give people an opportunity to play basketball. And so
do you think in this conversation, do you think there is any resolution to these woes and stuff like that with the whole thing? I mean, of course, we know the funding is one thing in which we understand and get that, in which I think the NMBT or Mike Richardson and them are trying to figure out something to take care of that on the fact of because it'll be a sanctioned MWR. But do you think there is anything else to basically solve any of this as Deion Claiborne picked up starting first class Deontay Claiborne, congratulations, champ. But is there anything else? Do you think there's anything like the NBA I know tries to do their best, NMBT tries to do their best, Capital Classic tries to do their best, everyone tries to, in my opinion, tries to thwart or remove away, especially when from competition wise, the open type of tournaments. But do you think that should just be something that it should go forth and be that, and that solves a problem? Like, what do you think will remove the politics that you speak of?
I think the open tournaments are cool. I think we went to Puerto Rico. I think, you know, if the NBA made that an open tournament, they're gonna get a lot more participation. It's a great destination. I know some people, like we talked before, Puerto Rico is a great destination, great tournament. I think if you make that an open tournament, you're gonna see 16, 24 teams out there because it's not that far to get to. It's a great time, great environment. I think we also went to the Chris Crawford Classic out in Pendleton, which is the same weekend as the Capital Classic. If Dave, you know, were to make that an open tournament, I think that you're going to see a lot of teams out there. You know, I've been to both tournaments, and I can tell you that I would much rather go out to San Diego, and I'd much rather go to the Chris Crawford Classic than the Capital Classic. The Capital Classic's just been an older tournament that's been around a long time. It's great for the East Coast teams. You know, it's an easy commute. But for like the Midwest teams coming, I wouldn't be making that trip to DC. I would definitely make that trip to San Diego every year. And I'm a little biased, right? Like those are my brothers, you know. Camp Pendleton's where I got out, the Marine Corps at. But just when you go there, the facilities are, you know, impeccable. The stuff that Dave did, as far as for coaches and players, food, the venue, I mean, everything, you know. So I would recommend, if you didn't get to that one this year, that they go. I think if they made an open tournament, it would get a lot more participation as well. And then you got coaches that feel like you shouldn't be able to pick up this player or that player, but those same coaches pick up old players that they ain't stationed there no more, but they pick them up to play with them when they go to these open tournaments. So it's like, I mean, you can't have there's tournaments that are made for just your installation team. I do believe that, and I think the NBA is, you know, our regular season games and our tournament, our end of season tournament and conference tournaments are for that. And
Right.
and by giving you the 3 exemptions, that allows you a little flexibility with your roster and your team, right? And I've heard about the competitive side of it. Some smaller bases like Yuma, and you know, Luke's a smaller base, but they super competitive. You got Shepherd, Alfred, some bases that, you know, they can't compete due to, you know, the personnel there. And I think off of those type of installations, maybe, you know, the NBA can figure out a way to help make those teams more committed. Maybe you give them 2 more exemptions. If your base is under this many people, you get 2 more exemptions, or you get, you know, there's ways to do it, right? To make it so that everybody's competitive, because when it's all for the service members and it's all for, you know, the awareness that we're trying to create. But my guy Simp there got him a ring. You know, so yes, but nobody wants to show up everywhere and get their head beat in, man. Like, I mean, that is just, you know, it's cool to go and have the camaraderie, but come on, man. Nobody wants to walk out on the court and know you're about to get beat by 30, 50 points, bro. Like, and ain't no amount of coaching going to change that. Ain't no amount, like, you need the players to be competitive. Like, I don't care who you are. You need players to be competitive. Now, a coach can change philosophies, can change the identity of a team, but it all starts based with your players that you have. And if you can't get the players to even have something to coach, then you're not going to be competitive. And so I think maybe they look at ways to get help. Maybe if you're based under so many, you get more exemptions than none. The issue with that is, now here's the issue. This is where I say it's not about service members, and it's not about this other team over here. I ain't going to say no names. Just another team over here, another coach isn't like, well, they get 5, I only get 3 just because they have. Like, come on, bro. Like, and that's where I say it's more about your ego or you than what the goal is here, right? Like, who cares, bro? Like, just show up and hoop, right? If they got 7 exemptions, I don't care, right? If they so happen to be stationed, Langley, for instance, you want to come in the NBA and you just so happen to be stationed there, and you got the largest naval base in the world, you got what? So what? Anybody is beatable any given day.
Correct.
Langley might beat me 9 out of 10 times, right? Well, right. You know what? I don't know when that one that I'm going to get is coming. So right now I'm 1-2 against them, but I got that one this year. You know what I'm saying? And I enjoy seeing teams like Langley and Luke and Cavazos and Pendleton when they're fully loaded, and Miramar and those teams, because I know what I need to do, right? I know if I'm going to compete with these teams on this level, this is what I need to do. People are mad at Justin because he didn't want to just stay and get beat up all the time. He recruited. That's part of coaching. Now, do I think you should recruit and have 10, 12 guys that, you know, are just not associated to your base, or they're not here? And I'm not saying that's what Justin did. I'm just saying being able to build relationships with players and coach players and get more and more people into your fold is part of being a coach in basketball and building your program. And so when a team does that, you can't be mad. If they beat you and you feel like that's why they beat you, well, then you might want to steal something from him. And something he's doing is right, you know? And so, and what I appreciate about, you know, the Lukes and the Paris Daniels of the world and Justin Johnsons of the world and the Max of the world and some of these other coaches is they speak openly about the stuff. You got other coaches that go back and they'll go file their little complaint or they'll drop anonymous tips and they won't come out and just say what it is their problem is. You know what I'm saying? Because, yeah, they want to complain, but they don't want everybody to know it was them complaining, you know? And so it's like those people are the ones that I think are not doing any good for military basketball. You know, if you coach one season and your team abandoned you to get to nationals and don't even want to go with you to the NBA finals because you can't field a team, probably shouldn't be coaching a team anymore. You know, coaching a team is about the relationships with your players. And if your players ain't willing to show up, your program is going to die. And it's just now that's another program that's out. And that's another however many service members that aren't getting the opportunity or the exposure that they should. And so the funding side of it, the NWR side of it, I don't know that side, right? So I'm not sure what they're going to do. Whatever they're doing, what Mike Richardson and them doing, and that's not really going to pertain to CMB because I don't have an NWR director to go to and be like, hey, we should get into this with Mike Richardson and them, and they're, this is what they're trying to do with funding, and Mike Richardson can't reach out to anybody on the behalf of CMB, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, I don't care about funding. At the end of the day, I don't care about funding. I will 100%. I've told everybody this. I didn't said this on here before. If you want to play for CMB, you need to get from anywhere in the world to wherever we're playing, and you're with CMB, you're covered. Mm-hmm. The only reason I ever mentioned funding is because I've heard a lot. It's always through the grapevine, right? Don't nobody ever say it to me is that Coach Lillard bought his team. Coach Lillard bought his team. That's the only reason people play for him is because he pays for everything. And this, I mean, okay, that's fine. You know what these guys also do is when I ask them to get on the floor for a loose ball, or I ask them to sprint back on defense, or I ask them to attack the rim, or I ask them to show up somewhere, they show up every time. So I don't, some people may like, oh, I ain't got a count on my pocket for this and it's cool. But I think once people get into the CMB program, it's a lot different than a lot of other programs. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm just saying it's different. And people enjoy playing with the guys that we have in the program. People enjoy the style that we play. And so it stays, bringing more people in. I've never recruited a player.
Okay. I'm
not on base. I don't go on Fort Carson. I'm hardly ever at the academy. My players basically recruit everybody. Or people come up to me at games and like, oh, you coach CMB? Oh, well, I'm stationed here. Can I come? Like, people reach out to me to play for CMB. Now, there's a couple players, from the Marine Corps that I'll recruit or I'll reach out to that, are my guys to get them to play with me in tournaments if they're not going. But I don't – that's not even recruiting. That's just asking my guys if they want to come hoop. And so Orlando going to be fun. I'll tell you that. But it's just a whole outside of the love for the coaching aspect and the playing. And playing wise, I realized this last weekend that, man, if you notice, I didn't check back in the second half of the Cannon game because I was hurting. Look, and the guys got on a run, man, and we just let them go. But I was hurting. I was like, man, I ain't played basketball like this in a while. That was a big court. So
it's crazy when you do those college, the professional courses. You be like, yo, this don't seem like.
Man, I was like, let's go back over to the rec center over here. I'm good there. So it was a great weekend, man. I think the events are great. Every tournament national is great event. NBA tournaments, great event. Coach Ace in Puerto Rico, great event. Coach Dave out in Pendleton, great event. And if I could just show up to those and play and coach, would love it. But all the backside of it, and it's like, damn near, I got to hire an admin person just to deal with all that and field all the stuff that I don't want to have to answer for anymore. So CMB will probably just be an open tournament team going forward. So if you want to get back with us, you're going to have to see us there. And that's what we're going to do. I think we would love to run some stuff back, but I just don't think I don't think that's the way it's going to pan out for us.
So in that saying, it sounds like you're right now. Your feeling is that y'all are done competing, as far as competing in the NBA and continuing to play in the CUSMLB, but you're not completely sold on that right now. But you have to basically go back and do some searching to see if it's worth it, or see if there's going to be some things to change.
Yeah. I think that, there'll be a coaches conference. Last year I went and I kind of was a fly on the wall, sat down and didn't, just listened. I think after this year, I think I'll probably attend and be more vocal about the things that I feel and the things that I think. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. What I know is that there's a lot of things that, and as any organization grows, there's a lot of things that we all learn, right? We learn, we adjust, we things happen this year that I'm sure, Jason, Mike, Al, Ace, they're like, man, never saw that one coming. Cool, we're going to adjust and pivot. And I think there's some things that, one of my things would be, I think like they have a basketball council. I think a lot of the things the NBA does needs to be more open, right? It can't be in the shadows. And I don't know if they're willing to do that. I'm not sold on the fact that, you have a complaint or something goes to a basketball council and then it's, oh, here's what the outcome was. Well, how did you get to that when I never even talked to anybody from the council? I never got to even say what my theory on this was, what my thoughts were. I think that we do need to take into consideration players more, is the fact, we had a situation where a guy 2 miles he's 2 miles closer to Peterson. It was like 1.4 or something. And they wanted to try to force him to play there, but he wanted to play for CMB, and it's like, yeah, I get players don't, you're supposed to be at a certain installation, this, that, and the third, but this player from FE Warren is going to spend his money, his time to drive down to whether it's practices, games, whatever. And you're going to dictate off of 1 mile between, when really, if you stay straight on I-25 south, you're going to hit Fort Carson and be faster than you are to Peterson. Mm-hmm. And so, like, little technical things like BS that I had to deal with. That coach had to pass on this guy for him to actually be able to play with us. But then if this coach don't pass on him, and the guy don't want to play there, now he's just out. Go sit up in Wyoming and not be a part of this. Like, that's stupid. Like, stuff like that is stupid. And I get it. There's rules, and that's stuff they'll potentially look at. That's just one of the examples, right? The whole voting, right? Voting on end of season awards and stuff, that's all a popularity contest. And unfortunately, when you win it, apparently you're not very popular. I don't know. I just think there should have been more guidelines put out on what's your criteria. Do I just pick my best friend? Or is there some rhyme or reason to why we picking coaches? Should, show up to tournaments, you're winning, you're confident. I won the regular season the last 2 years. I done won how many tournaments? My team went all the way to Puerto Rico, came back, adjusted our schedule to play the club team because it was right over spring break. Their guys had to leave, played a game against them, and then showed up the very next weekend and played. We played 9 games in a week's time frame in the NBA. And to include the tournament, people are like, oh, that was your choice. Okay, but that's the participation part, right? You know how many teams originally signed up for this Puerto Rico tournament? And you know how many teams actually made it there?
Yeah.
The Puerto Rico tournament was supposed to be a big showdown. We were supposed to see everybody out there. And they didn't, and none of them showed up. So, like, again, and these are teams we're considering for awards and coaches for awards. And, you got coaches that play 12-game schedules, didn't leave their state, didn't win a tournament, and I know it's not really about the accolades, but it just goes to show that some of these people voting on stuff, or some of these coaches that got no clue what they talking about, what they doing, and honestly, that's fine. Keep doing that because it just makes it that much easier to win. Honestly, I watch a coach sit over there, don't make no adjustments for a whole game, getting beat by 20, 30 points, doing the same thing. Cool. And I hear all the rumblings, I hear all this and that, and it's just, I got better things to do than this, man.
Can you open the bag?
It's so it is funny because in saying that in which a lot of people take in consideration people who, if you feel like that you earned an accolade, right? You feel that like not everyone is saying that I need this accolade, but you feel like you earned an accolade. So when you sit down and look at the fact of what my resume is compared to the last person's resume, it puts you in a certain sense. Like you might not care about the accolade, but it's a simple fact. Like if this is what's out there, I'm in position to earn this. Like why am I not in? And I can understand that completely tenfold in reference to what you feel like you should be getting and what you're getting and how things are coming. Is like, and you like you said, you start to wonder like, hey, where's the transparency in this? So I can fully understand and know that okay, I was be fair and square. Now, unfortunately, like you said, your peers voted, and if your peers tend to say, "Hey, this is what it is," then you kind of like have to take that on the chin. But still, what was the criteria, and what? So that way, who voted on the criteria? What was the criteria to say that this is how we ended up with this result?
Right. And there's certain aspects of it where you don't know, nobody knows the behind the scenes stuff for all the coaches that they do, right? Mm-hmm. And you can say, oh, this team had a great turnaround this season, and they can, this. We got guys when, player of the year, that their team was like 1-15. And I don't mean the guy didn't have a great season, right? But your team success has to kind of play a part in, player of the year voting as well. But not everybody looked at it that way.
And hope so. One thing I definitely hope is that we see him continues and is going to still be around to compete, to see it for the most part as best you can. I know there's a lot of teams that went the independent route, in which saying they survived and they did it. But of course, the ideal is ultimately if I had a magic wand and I could sit up and say, this is what I want, or this is what I like to see, especially in military basketball, it would be that saying both I guess you could say powers that be can get together officially and be able to create to where there's an all season long. Like I honestly believe that this the NBA and the NMBT have could have a gracious partnership going to where you have this is tournaments. Oh, of course, with everyone else, the Chris Crawford Classic, the Joe Hall Classic, Capital, and everything. Like there can be like we see there's a year of military basketball. There's a year of military basketball that spans out across the time frame, and if everyone could get together and be able to enact and do and get together and sign up to be like, okay, everyone get in the room and talk about this is how we're going to do this year. This is what we're going to do. It will work out tremendously, but that's not what we have. Of course, you have people that tend to that have their agendas, which is nothing wrong with that. In which what they're doing to move forth.
Yeah, then you muted, Trey.
I'm sorry, it comes with the bumps and bruises. So hopefully it all comes together at some point to where they all figure it out. The coaches and stuff will follow suit, and then everyone to be able to work and play together and be able to be one huge community without any of the other stuff, like I said, the politics and everything like that. At some point, it may be that, but for the most part, it's a lot of teams in which since I started like covering and paying more and more attention to the military basketball, you lost a lot of teams to a certain point. You lost a lot of coaches. Some, of course, are going on to bigger and better things. When you start to get lost because people don't like people or people don't agree with other people, which is a part of life. but I hope there's not another team lost in CMB in that in-state. Y'all can figure out to where you can continue to compete. I mean, y'all are part of the culture at this point. Like y'all are one of the top. Although Coach Johnson, Coach Dre and them won the nationals. Now y'all have, saying presumably y'all the top dog. It was JBLE just a year ago. Before that, it was looking like Fort Hood / Cavazos with Coach Uriah. So now CMB has entered back into the conversation. Luke, we all know, is part of the conversation. JBLE, it's like a bunch of teams out there. It's teams that we only talk about. Cannon, Riley at one point, like you said, wasn't an underdog. So I hope that all changes. But before we get out here, I wanted to bring up, you said something key, right? You got Peterson, you got Carson, and then you have CMB that sits in the middle of that. And you say players tend to navigate that the recruiting aspect, not that you send them to go do that, but they just do that naturally because they played for CMB. You have players that do through the grapevine hear about CMB, and they tend to end up playing there. How is navigating that for the most part? Do you ever basically turn a player and tell them like, hey, do this first, or is it all comers and you just like, hey, this is where they want to be at, this is where they can be at, and go from there?
So when Peterson came into the league, it's basically like if you were on Peterson or Space-based Delta, whatever it is now, you had to play over there in the NBA stuff. Open tournaments, yeah, they were optional, but for NBA stuff, they had to play for Peterson. So that's why we ended up losing some guys. I had guys that played for me last year that we lost that national championship, sending me screenshots of it this year, saying they were wishing they were there with us. And, it would have been a huge help, to still have some of those guys. Coach Ty over at Fort Carson, we kind of formed an alliance this year a little bit. He came, helped coach during some of the NBA stuff. He was there on our bench. He helped a lot. He got some Carson players to come over to CMB as well. But for the most part, if Carson and CMB had something, a lot of those guys would either go with Carson or CMB. CMB's had its core guys, Simpson, Michael Argyle, Clinton, and Jakari. Those were guys that were been with CMB. Even though they were at Carson, they were always with CMB, right? Like they've played for Carson, but they were always CMB guys. We had a couple other guys that they don't suit up for Carson. They've always been with CMB, and I think that's kind of maybe where some of the discrepancy came from this year. People are like, well, CMB, what base are they? Are they Carson? They got Carson guys. Okay, Carson is a huge base. And some players, it's just their fit, right? We had guys that played for both teams. We had guys that chose to stay with Carson. We had guys that chose to stay with Peterson or with CMB. And it was the fit, however they fit in, with the group that we had built. And that's, coaching, you got to build the pieces to how you want your team to play. And so some guys fit into my system better, or some guys fit into Carson's system better. So Coach Ty was huge in helping us this year. He helped coach when if I had to play, he was there. Hey, coach, we should try this. We should try this, or we should try that. And some of his guys came and played with us. And so it was good because, we're in separate organizations. Like they're not in the NBA, and so to get those same guys more exposure, they played in both. And it was good, and I think it was hard for people to maybe rank Carson and CMB because they were like, oh, well, some of the players play on both. And it's like, well, yeah, but when we went to nationals, they had their guys, we had our guys, and their guys were their guys and our guys were our guys. And sometimes we co-mingled, but for the most part through the season, like the CMB guys have been CMB for, 3-4 seasons now. We have guys that are getting ready to rotate. And we could bring in new guys for sure. We have an advantage with the academy for sure. And some of the academy guys come in, and some people might not like that, but it is what it is. What we wanted to do this year, we set out to do. After we lost at nationals, it hurts when you lose, but I wasn't really that hurt by that one. I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like runner up with what we had, the injuries we went through, what we did to get here, the teams that we beat to get here. I couldn't have been more proud of my team. And so, you know, I sit here, you know what I'm saying? Sit here with this one. And I take the runner up, and, you know, I get my get back with one same event, and I take this one, you know. And we'll go down to Orlando. Orlando's a fun tournament for us, man. So
yeah, it's fun. Yeah,
we don't ever go anywhere to lose, but it's a fun tournament, right? Like not as strict on guys going out, and not as strict as guys, hey, be in the house by this time, and we're gonna have a good time. I feel like we had a really successful season, and I can't be, you know, more proud of the relationships that, you know, I built with my players and the season we had, and guys' families and everything. It was great, man. It was great to get calls and texts after we won, and, you know, people sending us screenshots from their TVs and videos, and I mean, it was a great experience, and I definitely loved that part of it. And if we can figure out how to keep it more like that,
do you run it back a third time in a row appearing on CBS? At this point, CBS got to pay y'all for you appearing on Bringing the Ratings.
In this game, we had to make this game more interesting, right? We had to give them the comeback so that they ratings this year, you know. So
raise the ratings.
right. So I think there's some things, if we can get figured out, man, we would love to still keep doing it. Mike Richardson's deal with the, you know, whatever they're gonna do, we'd love to be a part of everything. It's just it's a unique situation where we're not really associated based, but just everybody just needs to understand. Everybody, well, what are you guys? I'm like, everybody on my team's a service member, man. We got Army, we got Air Force. You know, I was in the Marine Corps. Everybody is affiliated to the military. Everybody at any given time, you know, if we go back to war, can get called up and go wherever in the world, you know, the government sends them. Mm-hmm. And so regardless if we don't claim a base or we don't claim this or that, or that doesn't matter, man. Everybody has the same CAT card. Everybody puts on the same uniforms as everybody else. And I think that's really what matters at the end of the day, right? It's like military basketball is about supporting each other. At any given time, really based off just military basketball alone, the amount of people that I know from just military basketball, you could almost be anywhere in the world and you could hit somebody if you need something, and somebody knows somebody or you know somebody that's going to get you taken care of. And I think that's what's the most important, is the brotherhood that comes with playing military basketball, or even being in the military. Some of the people that I consider like family right now are guys that I met in the military, that I know I can count on any given time. You know, if one of my kids is stuck somewhere, I'm going to call somebody and they're going to get them taken care of, you know? And I think that's what we need to focus on, not the wins and losses or the trash talking. Is fun, man. It's fun. It's just basketball. And as long as it stays just basketball, we're all cool, man. But I think what people need to look at is just the camaraderie. The guys that are in right now, when you get out the military, you look at some of these old guys that you see at these events, and that was them 20 years ago. I saw Jelani Nix this weekend. He was my old head, you know, carrying my bag Miller. You know, when I was stationed in Okinawa, 18, 19 years old, you know, and now he's showing me to his fight, like this is where he was, you know, and so it's good to see those guys still, you know. And then still guys change their flights to stay and watch, you know, support me and my team just based off the relationships that we had. You know, my guy Jacobs and Nate, and everybody was there for the game, you know. Yeah. It wasn't a Marine team playing, but it was a Marine in the game. So we all stayed. And we all supported all the teams that had lost, that showed up and were there. You know, that's what it's about, you know. Yeah. And I think as long as we can get everybody to understand that that's what should be the forefront of everything, then I think we're in a really good place. We just got to get some people to put some egos aside, man, and realize that it's not about one individual here, man. It's about everybody.
It's about everybody, yeah. One band, one foul. So, Coach, we greatly appreciate you coming on today. Of course, again, shout out to CMB, that's Colorado Military Basketball 2024. NBA, Military Basketball Association's champions. It's been, like you said, it's been a good year. Hope to sit up and see more and engage. Of course, I look to step and do more in reference to military basketball sports as well as other military based sports. So I got to be able to see my man there, and so in doing this, so is so that way you can continue on and give congratulations and see everything, especially when you look at you took over the program from Mike Myers, and here it is years later still doing this. So it's got to be. I know he's proud of that whole situation. So I don't know if I'm going to be in Oklahoma or not yet. To see if I could see what's going on, but I'll probably call Commissioner Myers and some of his crew and ask some questions and make some suggestions, because sometimes as always, I look at it as a blueprint for everything that we do. And sometimes we follow that blueprint and make it our own. You probably get more. Out of it. So it don't hurt to make a suggestion and see where it goes. But anything before you get out of here, champ? Any other last words?
No. Just I'll make sure I let everybody know if they want to come to the ring ceremony. You know, when Mike gets it all set up for us. You know, anybody that's local to Colorado or Cannon, you guys just short drive. You want to come up and see what you could have had. Other than that, man, no, it was a great season. Love everybody that took part in it, man. And yeah, man, I just hope everybody made it back home safe, and we're glad we were able to finish this season out right, man.
So there you have it, people. The CMB, they're the champs. They're the king of the hill right now. Y'all got to go through them in order to sit up and get it next year, or maybe you don't get a chance to go through them next year to get it one way or another. Make sure y'all hit up Coach Miller. Continue to congratulate, and that's it for tonight. Y'all enjoy y'all's day as y'all get back into the week. I know y'all was able to enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. Next up, the Battle of the Badges, July. Hit up Timo or Wayne or any of them if y'all trying to get down with that. Until Friday, I'll holler at y'all. Peace.